Is Andre Pollard the best fly-off in South African history? Now, this is obviously going to be quite subjective, but I will try and present my case as well as possible. As always, let me know your guys' opinions down in the comments. Who do you think is the best Springbok fly-off of all time? Also, if you haven't, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. As you know, we're trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and make sure you leave this video a like. Let's jump in and see who is the best Springbok fly-off of all time. Now, the way I look at this is that there's a couple of different eras. There's obviously the era before apartheid and the isolation of South African sports. There's the era after, and then there's sort of a transitional era in the middle. So starting with the era before apartheid, we're going to start off with Benny Osler, who was considered the best Springbok fly-off before Naas Botha's era. Benny Osler played from 1924 to 1933, where he played 17 caps or test matches for the Springboks. He was known to be quite a good kicking fly-off, but he also had lightning pace, which made him very, very dangerous. He was also inducted into the International Rugby Hall of Fame in 2009. So Benny Osler was the first great Springbok fly-off, but you can argue that the game was completely different back in 1924 to what it is now 100 years later. Then if we fast forward time a little bit to the 1960s, the next Springbok fly-off that has to be taken into consideration is Keith Oxley. Now, he played 19 tests for the Springboks between 1960 and 1965. He had a reputation for being an attacking genius, was a very, very good attacking fly-off, and then towards the back end of his career, he was regarded as quite a good goal kicker. Some notable achievements for Keith Oxley was that he scored 2 tries in the series win over the All Blacks back in 1960, and that was a massive, massive win because the All Blacks have always sort of been this powerhouse. He also broke the record for the most points in a career. He smashed the record. The record was 55 points, which was set in 1928, and he broke that by scoring 88 total points in his career. So he broke that record that had stood for 24 years, and he was also the first player to get 100 caps for Natal. So we can start to see a little bit more of an attacking style of play. Keith Oxley obviously didn't play that many test matches in 19, but he played a lot of rugby for Natal and also picked up a notable big win over New Zealand back in 1960. And then we move over into the transitional period. Now, these dates I've set at 1980 to 1999, and there's 3 fly-offs that fall into this category. Obviously, the first being Naas Botha, who played from 1980 to 1992. He won 28 caps for the Springboks, but that obviously coincided with South African sports isolation. So he probably would have played a lot more test matches if it wasn't for that isolation. And I do think that is going to play a part in whether we think Naas Botha is the best Springbok fly-off of all time. But in those 28 caps, he scored 312 points, including 18 drop goals, and he won the Currie Cup 7 times with Northern Transvaal. He's widely considered to be the best fly-off that the Springboks have ever produced. And I think if you ask a lot of people over the age of sort of 40, 50, 60, Naas Botha will be their best fly-off that has ever played for the Springboks. We then move over into after Naas Botha, 1993 to 1996, and this was the Joel Stransky era. He'll always be remembered for that drop goal in the World Cup final against the All Blacks in 1995. He played 22 caps for the Springboks and was basically the definition of BMT. He had ice in his veins. He was very cool, calm, and collected. But I don't think Joel can be considered one of the best Springbok fly-offs just because he only played for 3 years. Yes, he had probably the biggest moment for South Africa with that drop goal at Ellis Park in 1995, which was a massive World Cup win for the Springboks, their first one just after apartheid, and it almost earmarked a new era for South Africa. And then we move over into Henry Honeywell, who played from 1993 to 1999, and now he was sort of this new age fly-off. He was a lot more physical, he was great on defense, but he was also lethal on attack, and probably one of the best attacking fly-offs that South Africa has ever produced. But his goal kicking did let him down, which is why he only played 35 tests for the Springboks. So those are sort of the 3 transitional fly halves between the old era and the new era. And then we move into the modern era, and I haven't included names like Butch James on this list. I haven't included Pat Lambie, whose career got cut short. There's only 2 fly-offs in the modern era that I think can potentially be the best fly-off of all time in South Africa. The first one is Morné Steyn. Now, Steyn played from 2009 to 2021. He had an illustrious career, 68 caps for the Springboks. probably his biggest moment was in 2009 when he kicked that 55-meter penalty to win the series against the British and Irish Lions at Loftus, which was absolutely massive. Morné Steyn is that guy you want over a penalty or a conversion to win the game. He had absolute ice in his veins, and yes, we have seen that with Pollard in the last couple of World Cups, but Morné Steyn kind of birthed that cool, calm, collected, ice in the veins, can kick from absolutely anywhere. And yes, he has been criticized for not being an attacking fly-off. He wasn't that good in play. But if you go look at the 2009 to 2010 Bulls team, who were probably one of the best club rugby sides in the world, that 2009 to 2010 Bulls side, you'll see a little bit of a difference of Morné Steyn. He's not just a kicking fly-off, he can attack. But I just don't know if he cracks the best fly-off of all time, because he just never won a World Cup in a time where the Springboks were considered one of the best sides in the world. And then finally, in the modern era, we've got Handré Pollard. I also haven't included Alton Yankees because I don't think he comes close to the best fly-off of all time in South Africa. But Handré Pollard, who has now won back-to-back World Cups. He was absolutely instrumental in winning the 2019 World Cup, but he wasn't the general in that team just yet. In 2023, he obviously didn't make the side because he was injured and eventually got called in for Malcolm Marx. And then he was almost the reason South Africa won the World Cup in 2023. His kicking ability, his ice cold veins, the BMT that man had in the 2023 World Cup to get us through all of those 1-point wins was absolutely phenomenal. We also saw that he was a leader in the change room. Chasing the Sun has given us a little bit more of an insight into what Handré Pollard is like off the field. In the change room, he's a massive, massive leader. And I just think at this time, he's the perfect Springbok fly-off for the Springboks game plan. Now, there's been a lot of very, very good fly-offs. If you think of Richie Mwanga, if you think of Beauden Barrett, who can absolutely break a game open, they're very attacking fly-offs. But that sort of style of play probably won't fit within the Springbok style of play at the moment. I think Handré Pollard's defense, attack, kicking ability, his ice-cold veins and BMT off the tee is what makes Handré Pollard so good in this Springbok outfit. And I think if the Springboks go on to win the 2027 World Cup and Handré Pollard is part of that team, I do think Handré Pollard will be the best fly-half of all time. I'm talking Dan Carter, Johnny Wilkinson. He will be the best fly-half of all time if he can go and win the World Cup 3 times. So what's my opinion? I do think the best fly-off South Africa have ever produced, Naas Botha, who was iconic, played for the Springboks for a very, very long time. And if it wasn't in that isolation period, I do think Naas Botha would have tallied up the caps, probably got 80 to 100 caps and cemented himself as the best fly-off of all time. But he never won a World Cup. And yes, that isn't his fault, but you do have to take the time that these players were playing and adjust the situation and your opinion on it. So one, if Naas Botha was playing in Handré Pollard's era and had the opportunities Handré Pollard has, I do think we'd be having a different conversation. Morné Steyn, I think, is also high up on that list just because he showed that you don't always have to be an attacking fly-off. If you can kick well, if you can control the game like a general, you can be a very, very good fly-off. But I do think Handré Pollard is the best fly-off that South Africa has ever produced. And if he goes on to win that 2027 World Cup, he'll be the best fly-off that has ever been produced in the world. So that's my take on it. A lot of very, very cool names that we went through in this video. As always, let me know your opinions down in the comments. Make sure you leave this video a like, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take it easy. Peace.